Thank you very much. We are here to bring you the story behind the music you love and to introduce you to the men who make that music at Orchestra Hall. You'll also get to hear an informal and easy-to-understand discussion of music and its interesting personalities. And what's more, you, listening right now, have an opportunity to win 2 main-floor tickets for a concert by the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. And today, let's open your Symphony Scrapbook to the pages devoted to that genial but tricky instrument, the French horn. And we have with us Mr. Arthur Goldstein, member of the horn section of the Chicago Symphony Orchestra, to tell us about this important instrument. Mr. Goldstein, I'm sure our listeners would like to have you identify for them the selection you played at the beginning of this program, and perhaps play some more from it.
That was the hornpipe from the suite Much Ado About Nothing by Korngold.
Since you're a newcomer to the orchestra this year and newcomer to this program, I think it'd be of interest to our audience to have you introduce yourself by telling us something about your background, your early training, how you came to take up the horn, and about your previous symphonic experience.
Well, originally I played trumpet. At the same time, I had a brother who was playing clarinet. And actually, at that time, we didn't know too much about the French horn. We hadn't heard it. And, well, there was one interesting program on the radio that seemed to interest us. It interested us from 2 points of view, one for the content of the story, and the other because of the music. Now that, I'm sure everybody knows it, is The Lone Ranger. Now, of course, the story, well, we understand everybody likes that. As far as the music goes, well, it starts off with a trumpet call, which goes something like this. So on. Well, about a few measures after the trumpet starts, 2 French horns come in. And for quite a while, we wondered what instrument that was, until somebody explained it to us. And, of course, we were quite fascinated with the sound of the instrument. The horns play this part. And a little later, well, this seemed to convert us, and we started to study horn. And I studied with Mr. Joseph Franzel, who's now in New York, following which I went into the Army, and afterwards went to the New England Conservatory of Music, where I studied horn with Mr. Willem Falconeer.
First horn player of the Boston Symphony.
That's right. And, well, while I was in Boston, I played in various places around town, such as the Pops and the New England Woodwind Quintet, and did various Broadway stage shows. And afterwards, when I graduated, I went to Buffalo, where I spent 2 years with Steinberg. And between the 2 years, I played with the St. Louis Sinfonietta. And after that, I came to Chicago.
Well, we're glad to have you with us, and it's an interesting story of how you came to take up that instrument. And now I think it's appropriate that we announce that we're glad to send a pair of tickets for a concert by the Chicago Symphony Orchestra to Mrs. C.A. Prock of Elmhurst because she sends in a question that's very appropriate to this program, and which I'll throw at you for an answer, Mr. Goldstein. She says, why is the French horn reputed to be so tricky or difficult to play?
Well, that question is slightly technical, but I think we can get through it. All instruments have a series of harmonics. And, well, harmonics, the easiest way to explain it would be by taking a bugle, and all the notes that a bugle plays are harmonics. It has no valves or any fake way to play a note. Everything is true and natural. Now, the horn, being a larger instrument, has many more of these open notes. And the most beautiful part of the horn is in the upper part of these open notes. Whereas, for instance, the trumpet player plays in a lower section of these notes, the horn player is always playing quite high. And the higher one goes, the closer these notes get to each other.
You mean higher in the scale?
That's right. For instance, well, way down low, you see those notes are spaced quite far apart. As you go higher, however, you can get the notes very close until finally you just can't tell the difference between one note and the next.
Now that's playing without the use of valves?
Well, that's right.
Now the difficulty would consist in what? And in separating the notes?
In separating the note. The notes, that is. Now, when you're sitting in the orchestra, you have so many measures rest, and all of a sudden the music calls for coming in on some very, very high note quite softly. You just have to pick out that right one. And if you don't pick out the right one, well, that's why this woman feels that the horn sounds as it does.
Well, I remember reading about someone saying of the horn that you have to humor it in the weak spots. But I judge then that there are quite a few weak spots?
Oh, yes.
Well, I judge then that you would say that the improvements that have been made on the horn through the crooks and lately the valves have improved the horn, but by no means improved the lot of the horn player?
Well, no, it has made it considerably easier, but it's still quite difficult.
Is such a thing as a trill a very difficult thing to play on the horn?
Yes. There are several types of trills. Inasmuch as we have valves now, it's quite possible to trill with valves.
I wonder if you could give us an illustration of that.
Take two notes that are very closely together.
Well, how could that be illustrated, say, from symphonic literature?
Yes. In Wagner's Siegfried Idyll, at the end of the solo, there is a trill. Now that sounds like it ends quite abruptly. However, the orchestra does come in and resolves that trill.
Or saves the situation?
Yes.
Now, the horn players, I know, look upon themselves as a very close-knit team. I read an article recently on the horns in the symphony orchestra pointing out that you really have a basic quartet. And sometimes you have 6 horns. Some orchestras, I know the Boston Symphony always has had 8. Now, is that a sort of a relief team? Is there a difference between the offensive and the defensive horn teams?
Well, actually, the Boston Symphony, I believe, had 9 at one time. And they had 2 quartets. Inasmuch as when the orchestra would put on a heavy program and the horn players would get tired, they might split the concert up and have one team come in first half and the other team come in for the second half. And this proved fairly successful.
Now, in Chicago, we have 6. Now, how are those divided?
Well, you have your regular 4, and on various pieces where you have to give relief. Relief is given to the first horn and the third horn, where the relief is most needed, inasmuch as the high parts, and those are the men that get a bit more tired. Of course, there are some pieces of music that are written for 6 horns, and of course there's no question there.
I was very much interested in running across a couple of books that you wrote. Was that fairly recently, on the certain complete methods for horns and woodwinds that have a distinctly humorous twist? I was wondering if you could tell us something about those.
Well, they were written while I was at school. The people I lived with, other students, they had been compiling a lot of jokes and comical bits about the difficulties of playing horn and other instruments, and well, I finally got courage enough to invest a little money and have it printed, and it seemed to have turned out quite well.
Well, they're very interesting. Have they just been privately circulated or publicly?
Well, they've been privately circulated. However, it has been quite successful, in as much as it's been not only all over the United States, but it has gone to foreign countries also.
I think it's rather... the illustrations are particularly interesting. You take on various disguises in these photographs.
Well, I did grow a beard for one of the pictures.
I think anyone interested in horn or woodwind playing would be interested in looking through those 2 booklets. The horn, we know, is a fairly familiar instrument to concert goers, and I have a feeling that Tchaikovsky must be a favorite composer of horn players. Is that so?
Yes, I believe that he played horn at one time himself.
And I think it'd be appropriate if we could have something from Tchaikovsky.
I'll play the introduction to Symphony No. 4.
There's one question I'd like to ask, and that is why some horn players seem to continually polish their horns and others to leave them unpolished.
Well, most horn players do polish their horns. Of course, this doesn't last very long, perhaps a week or so. And then the horns start to get dirtier and dirtier. Some horns are lacquered and they don't need cleaning. However, I believe that most of the horns are not cleaned because most of the horn players are quite lazy, or else they have too much other to do.
Well, thanks, Mr. Goldstein, for this very interesting addition to our scrapbook, which I'm sure our listeners have enjoyed very much.